right, guys, welcome to part 2 of our Outsiders podcast for the Book Corner. Today I'm joined with
Arnell, as usual. Hello.
And Roxanne. Hello.
and as you guys know, my name is Ro. Let's get into it. So last time we kind of covered about our characters and our hot takes on the characters. So today let's go ahead and get into our major themes. So I think first things first we should cover is probably class conflict. Let's start off with some like keywords. What was like a first word that popped into your mind when you were reading this?
The ghetto. Yeah, the ghetto.
The ghetto.
Yeah. A lot of it was unfair.
Agreed. I think the word
brotherhood.
The word that kept popping up to me was definitely the struggle.
Oh yeah, the struggle was real.
Just I don't know. I feel like the whole point was looking at the monetary issue. But like realistically, it's like yes, they were like below the medium income, but they were still like doing their own thing, you know?
I also like the fact that it shows that it's not always about race. Sometimes it's about money.
Yeah, it's about money.
And in these poor communities, when you have conflict like this, it's not always because of the race.
Yes.
Usually it's because of the two socioeconomic statuses.
Agreed.
Coming head to head, and one thinking they're better than the other, and the other also thinking that one's better than the other.
Agreed. You got one word that comes into your mind when you saw the class conflict, Roxy?
To me, it was completely misunderstanding.
Oh, misunderstanding.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah. Probably once again, we just like the need to understand each other. That was also something.
Yeah, because they all had their own struggles, and I feel like if they had made the extra effort to understand the other side, they probably wouldn't have had so
all
much
that
conflict with each other.
Well, and I think that kind of leads to our second overall theme was definitely the idea of identity and belonging. This is something I think both sides were struggling with, both the greasers and the Socs, because you know they're told their whole lives this is who you are, this is what you are, and this is what you grow up in. But then in reality is they are not. You know, not everyone's cut out like out of one piece of cloth. Like they are all very different.
Exactly. And they were overcompensating in a way to fit in.
Right. Just
because a lot of the things they were doing was to get validation from their peers.
Yeah. And like when they decided to go outside of that and just accept each other as they are, accept themselves for as they are, as we saw with Ponyboy and Sherry.
Yeah.
It brought conflict. Big conflict.
Big.
Because the idea that a Soc and a greaser can talk and get to know each other is just unfathomable.
Yeah.
And wrong in some senses for them.
So
wrong that they would do unthinkable things.
Yeah, because we can see where Bob believed that the Socs girls aren't supposed to talk to the greasers boys because they belong to us. That was
and then we gotta sprinkle in the misogyny in there.
Yes. So that kind of
they own these women or these young
that
girls.
kind of like leads us to the next one, which is the violence and redemption. Right? There's a lot of violence in this novel.
Yeah,
a lot.
There's
it's very casual, and it's seen as a kind of badge of honor to cut someone with a knife or bring violence towards the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. That's just for me to have not grown up or in that sphere, could have, but did not. It's just hard to accept that to have violence is to be accepted. To be violent towards someone who's not of the same class, the same life situation as you are, that's the goal, to be belonging in your own group. That's, for me, that was wild. And you know, of course, like a lot of the negativity was directed towards the Socs because they were coming down and harassing the greasers, but also that kind of, but then it's kind of returned, right? The greasers go out of their way to get in fights Even though, yes, most of the time the socialists is who started it, but the greasers definitely continued that fight afterwards when they could have chosen a different path.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's move on. Anyone else got something to add on?
I do feel like the violence wasn't really surprising because when you basically have nothing, you're kind of pushed into a corner. And I feel like because the socialists had a lot, they were able to run around in circles differently, right? So you could see them getting in their cars and kind of driving around looking for greasers to commit violence on them, but they knew they had the protection of the law because of their status.
Yes.
So I feel like the greasers really didn't have a choice but to also kind of engage in violence because
agreed.
they had to defend themselves. Because you can see with Johnny and Ponyboy, they were just minding their own business at the park.
Yeah, literally. And the whole entire reason why that conflict started is because Ponyboy made that connection with Cherry.
Yeah, like it was just a little bit of a friendship. I don't really think it was going to grow into anything because I feel like the class divide was a little too wide. The fact that they were just able to get to know each other on just a person level was refreshing.
Yeah. I mean, Cherry was really giving older sister vibes. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I don't think it was going to ever be romantic.
Okay. All right, well, let's dive into the next part. So after violence and seeking that redemption factor, that kind of leaves us to heroism and sacrifice. This was one of like a major key turning points in the novel, especially for the climax. I thought we're not going to give you spoilers, by the way, but we're going to lightly tap on it. But just know, like, this was a major theme.
It was a great moment in the book.
Okay, so let's talk about heroism and sacrifice. Definitely we see that through our two characters, right? Johnny and Dally.
Yeah.
But like for you guys, what point in the novel was it that you thought what a true hero was kind of like sticking out for you?
When Johnny decided that no matter what anyone says, because remember Dolly was telling him, oh, don't go there. He said, oh, I'm going, because what he felt in the moment, remember, he come like in his home life, he don't have anybody to defend him. Everything is on him, and he decided that, okay, it's my time to do something for someone else, because they were kids. Okay. And when he decided, no matter what, I'm going in there, that for me was when that heroism shows for me.
Okay, so I think that a point where I saw a lot of like true heroism is Dally actually jumping in, because this whole book he was just like very about himself, did not care about anybody else, kind of on the war path within his own self. I feel like he was at war within himself, and we saw how that played out. But he kind of stepped outside of himself for once, and I feel like we saw a glimpse of what he could have been.
Yeah.
If his circumstances were different.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed. And that kind of leads us, I think, to our final theme that we saw was trauma. Like, how did trauma impact each of these characters? Because a lot of them face trauma in a different kind of way, right? With Dally, he seemed to have a very traumatic life. He, of course, wore that on his sleeve like it was, you know,
it was armor.
Like armor. Something he was proud of. Because the reality is going to prison and having a criminal record. I mean, I don't think that's something that typically someone would be very proud of or use it as a badge of honor. And then you have to question, because he is so young. How have you?
He definitely wasn't more than 18.
No, how do you have that much violence in your life from a young age? And that just calls into play of what kind of traumatic experiences did he have. And this is kind of something I kind of wish the author spent a little bit more time on, was just kind of delving into trauma. But like, you got to remember, like, this novel was written super long time ago, so the idea of a character having trauma and then, you know, actually dealing with that trauma was not a concept yet. So
yeah, that's true.
You know, maybe someone's got to make like a canon novel and actually deal with the trauma for us people who enjoy this book. We're like, but we're at the same time going, why haven't you dealt with your trauma?
I feel like if he had a more nurturing presence in his life, because it was touched upon that Ponyboy, the boys, right? Their mother was kind of playing that role for Dally as well before she passed away. So I feel like him going through all that loss definitely impacted, and also not having a system behind him, his parental, the parent roles were definitely non-existent.
Yeah, especially with how his mom was. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I agree. His mom was kind of messy.
But also you can see the juxtaposition between Dally's whole character growth and Johnny's.
Yeah.
He also didn't have a good a good situation with his parents. And it kind of made him quieter. It kind of made him minimize himself.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the opposite effect.
And it also like calls into play too the trauma that happened within the story. I mean, there were several traumatic several traumatic moments in that novel that just had me on the edge of my seat. And that kind of just really, because I think when someone deals with trauma, there's one of two ways that they can go about it. And obviously the first way is that they just don't change. Like they just continue as they are. Sometimes, if anything, they become a worse version of themselves. Or they decide to take this traumatic experience as a lesson and try to evolve and become a better person. So it was interesting to kind of see how some characters did go the one route and how some characters decided to go the opposite route, depending on how they process the trauma that happened, even ongoing within the story.
Yeah. That's true. Some characters changed and some characters didn't, which was very important.
Yeah, because the older brother, he wasn't at the end because of all the tragedy. He opened up instead of close off. He opened up, and that's how their relationship improved from there.
All right, guys, we have reached the end of our episode. Let's pose some questions to the audience. First things first, I would love to ask you guys, audience, who did you identify the most as a character? And why do you believe this character is someone that you most identify with? And
now, if you guys have watched our previous episode, you will find out how we answered this question.
Yeah, and why? Like, why do you identify with that particular character? We would love to know, because obviously we have our reasonings just because of the lives that we've lived. And so this is kind of just like a fun recall. Like, how does you connecting with this character mean something in your own personal life? That's the question that we are very curious for you to delve into.
Yeah. The next question we have here is alternate endings. So, if you guys did read the book, I'm not going to say who survived and who didn't survive.
This is a spoiler-free zone.
So, how would their survival impact the characters and the overall message of the novel?
Oh, this is I think we kind of touched on this.
Yeah, we got to tiptoe around this because we don't want to give too much away. We do want to encourage you guys to read the book.
Yes. All right, you want to do question number 3, Roxy?
Okay, question number 3. If the insider was sent into if the outsider was set in today's world, what changes do you think would be necessary to make the story relevant to modern readers? Ooh.
That I would be very curious to hear their responses, because this one we didn't really even touch on with our discussion, but I would love to hear the audience's reaction. And last but not least, the personal impact. So what was the most memorable scene for you? Why did it stand out? Because, oh my goodness, I think we touched on a lot of the scenes that stuck out to us.
There was so much, there was so many.
So to hear your guys' opinion, that would be very interesting, and just to delve into, because everyone's got different opinions about the story, 100%. I mean, that's just how perspectives work. But
we could have gotten into a lot more things. We definitely got into a lot of things off camera. but we didn't want to keep you guys here too
That
long.
would turn into like a 4 different part episode, and we gotta do the other book next month, guys. Which is on theme. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us for part 2 of The Outsiders. We hope you guys enjoyed this lovely episode with us. I'm Ro.
I'm Arnell.
And I'm Roxanne.
And see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.